So the first Black Phone was one of those movies that I thought was good, but I wasn't quite as enamored with it as a lot of other people were. Interestingly enough, it was the more supernatural elements of that film that didn't really work for me for whatever reason. So when I heard that Black Phone 2 leaned into the supernatural even more, I have to admit I was skeptical. But now, having seen part 2 for myself and sitting with it for a couple of hours, I'm going to go out on a limb and actually say that I prefer this film over the original. Who would have thought? Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
Bad dreams haunt 15-year-old Gwen as she receives calls from the Black Phone and sees disturbing visions of 3 boys being stalked at a winter youth camp. Accompanied by her brother Finn, they head to the camp to solve the mystery, only to confront the Grabber, a killer who's grown even more powerful in his death. So when I say that this film goes all in on the supernatural vibes that the first film only kind of flirted with for at least half of its runtime, I mean that it actually does go all in. And I do think that this movie actually benefits quite a bit from not having to hold back this time in that aspect. This movie successfully takes what worked in the first film, or what people liked about the first film, and expands upon it in a satisfying way, like a great sequel should. A good example of that is the Grabber himself, as a character. Of course he was creepy in the first film, but to me he felt like an absolute menace in this film. I think taking him completely into the supernatural realm ups the ante of the entire film and makes him that much more of a threat.
We're gonna die!
Sure, there's definitely some Freddy Krueger vibes going on here, and this film is very much taking inspiration from the Nightmare movies, but to me it was doing it in a way that pays homage while also feeling fresh, and it didn't feel like a lazy rehash like it would have in lesser hands. I mean, this feels like the next logical step after killing off the face of the franchise in the first film. And I actually think that going this route with the character is going to elevate him into a more iconic status, especially if this continues. We are also introduced to an older, more hardened version of Finn from the first film. And this film very much addresses the question that very few horror films are able to address in a meaningful way. What happens to the survivor of these horrific events? What happens to the person who defeated the evil last time around? And it makes it even more interesting from a character perspective when you consider that Finn was a child when he did it. To see him in this film as a more confident but yet still damaged figure, I think it did a lot to help me buy into his character this time around, and Finn is quickly becoming one of the better horror heroes that we've had in a film in some time. I will admit, however, that he does take a little bit of a backseat to his sister this time around. Not in a major way, but it does kind of make sense considering the direction of the film. At the end of the day, none of it took away from his personal conflict with the Grabber, and that's all that really matters. Yes, his sister Gwen is in a more expanded role, and she is carrying a bulk of the weight both physically and emotionally throughout the course of the movie. And she does so in such a convincing way. She's dealing with a lot in this film. She's dealing with this gift that very much is starting to feel like a curse. She's dealing with the mysteries surrounding the visions that she's been having, all while being stalked by a supernatural serial killer, and oh, by the way, she's trying to have a normal life in the process. She is asked to do a lot, and what I can tell you is that actress Madeline McGraw handles it effortlessly. And oh yeah, her sassy attitude complete with scathing one-line insults return as well, so she has a lot of comedic entertainment value on top of everything else.
Had you ever heard of the healing power of laughter?
I think one of the coolest aspects of this movie is how the visual style of the film changes, going from the real world into the dream world. The Visions or Dream World has a more grainy, sinister look to it, pun intended, and it's almost as if when she goes into the dream world, she is stepping into a separate movie and it was just so visually appealing. This film also takes a less is more approach, which to me is always a great thing. Both the grabber as a character and the violence in the film are reserved for the moments where it feels like they have the most impact. And the violence in the flashback visions in particular does not hold back, and it's just as disturbing as you would expect. The change of location to a snowy mountain environment did wonders for Black Phone 2. It gave them an opportunity for some pretty interesting visuals, even if some of them did look a bit too green screeny at times for me.
What is real? How do you define real?
I also enjoyed this film's use of music. Similar to the first film, there is a montage scene in this movie that features a Pink Floyd song that I felt like was perfect. I've always wondered why more films don't use Pink Floyd songs, because their music does have a very cinematic feel to it. It's actually a pretty inconsequential scene, but it ended up being one of my favorite scenes just because of how fucking cool it was. I already mentioned how this film is very much taking inspiration from the Nightmare on Elm Street series, but I also noticed a lot of references to other films like Friday the 13th and even The Shining. And I don't know if it was intentional, but there was even a reference, at least from what I could see, of Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. The way that they used a certain character in a certain situation in Black Phone 2, it had to be intentional. If you know, you know.
Can you prove it, cabrón?
The thing that I actually enjoyed most about this movie, in addition to all the other things that I've already mentioned, is that there is an emotional core to this film that not a lot of modern horror movies are able to pull off. There are certain twists or revelations in this movie that might have come off as forced in a lesser film, but I think that director Scott Derrickson actually brings it all together quite nicely. For me, everything was just resonating from a character and from a family perspective. And at the end of the day, when they can make you care, that's all you can really ask for. I did think that there was a couple of moments of dialogue throughout the film that came off a bit exposition-y, and some of the plot points could be considered cliche, I suppose, but it wasn't egregious enough to distract me from everything that the film was doing right, and I was still able to have a good time with it. Bottom line, I think having the balls to take this franchise into a somewhat different direction actually ended up paying off. They could have very easily taken the easy way out and just did a prequel movie just so they can include the grabber once again. Instead, they chose to move forward while also having these prequel-esque flashbacks, and just everything about it worked for me. This is a slow burn horror movie that takes its time and does not rush into what it's trying to accomplish. I mean, there's themes of guilt, depression, acceptance, religion. I would find it hard to believe that you could watch this movie as a horror fan or just as a fan of storytelling in general and not get something out of it. This is easily one of the bigger surprises of the year for me, if for no other reason, it ended up not being a throwaway sequel. They managed to push the boundaries of what was established in the first film while simultaneously building on what was established in the first film like a sequel should. And that's why the Black Phone 2 is going to be getting the pleased Palpatine.
Good. Good. Y'all be cool. Right on.